Hi everyone, I'm Ashley, Education Developer here at Blick Art Materials. We're super excited to bring you this very special holiday handmade block printed cards demo. I want to remind everyone that we are doing a $100 Blick e-gift card giveaway this evening. So to be eligible to win that gift card, all you need to do is like this post, like our page, and follow us, and comment with a response to that prompt in the chat and let us know what your thoughts are. And you'll be eligible to win that $100 Blick gift card. We're going to be using Speedball block printing inks on Strathmore acid-free printmaking cards that are 5x7. We're going to incorporate a very easy to use design process that is going to help you get started on making that holiday sentiment. Don't forget to check out our bundle page where you can find all the products that we're going to be using in this project today. You'll also find a design template that you can print out so that you can follow along and you can make your own holiday cards after this presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and get started so that we can get some of these cards cranked out. And the first thing that you're going to need is this printout, if that's what you're going to use. And you'll notice that it has a gray and black differentiated areas. So we're going to use that as a guide when we start carving. The first thing we're going to do is cut along the dotted lines just to cut our template down to size. Now you're not going to be responsible for drawing this entire design. We're just going to do a quick transfer using Surreal graphite transfer paper. So once you get this cut down, you're also going to cut a piece of Surreal that's approximately the same size. And what you're going to want to do here, and I've already got this started for us, is you're going to want to place that piece of Surreal graphite paper graphite side down. Now if you forget to do that, you might end up tracing a whole lot and not get very far. So, like I almost did when we started. So go ahead, place that graphite side down, and then you're just going to place your design template design side up, and that's how we're going to start this transfer. So tack down your design, and before we do that, before we get too far, I want to introduce this Readycut rubber that we're going to be using. So you see that I've got my graphite paper and my design template placed on this solid rubber block. This is Readycut, which is a kind of spongy rubber that's very easy to carve, so very achievable in terms of block printing process. And it has a gray and white layer. And when you carve away that gray layer, that's going to give you a negative space when you print. And anything that's left in gray will be a positive space that's printed. And we're going to see that in action. So if you look at this radial design that's provided, which I've already carved, you can see that where the gray areas are carved away, you see the white come through. When you're carving, make sure that you carve all the way through to the white, or else that gray area will still print. So definitely a pro tip for using this Readycut rubber. Otherwise you'll have a super easy time even with a detailed design like this. So I'm just going to set that right here actually. Okay, so now we're putting all the pieces together for this transfer process, and I'm going to gently tack down with some blue painter's tape, but you can use any tape that you might have on hand. And I'm just going to tack down the corners. Now I want to be careful how much pressure I apply to this area because the graphite can get a little smudgy and it won't do any damage, but it might make your transfer cloudy, and we want a nice clean transfer as much as possible. So you don't have to use too much pressure even when you're using your pencil. Okay? So now that I have this in place, I'm going to just take a regular pencil. This is an HB. And with regular pressure, I'm going to outline any of the design that is black or around the perimeter of the design itself. So let's go ahead and outline some of these elements. Now when you're using this design, you can edit out any amount of detail that you think isn't totally necessary. So if you're looking at this design as a beginner and you're thinking, wow, that seems like a lot, don't worry. You can always leave out one of these rows. I think this design will work however you edit it down. And I just want to show you quickly what you will see as you're transferring. So you'll see that graphite start to adhere to the Readycut rubber perfectly. Okay, so let's keep going, and we're going to pretty soon get ready to carve this design. So I'm going to trace these. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Your transfer will show up as a thicker line as it is. So don't worry too much about getting everything exactly the same because as it is on the design, because you might just end up getting smudgy instead. Okay, and we're going to do this rosette in the middle, but I'm going to leave out the details right in the center because that might be too tight for me to carve right now. Okay, and then last but not least, I'm going to do these elements here. And take your time. And one of the things I like about this as a transfer process is that I can see where my pencil has been. So if I lose my place, I can easily take a close-up look and I can see where my pencil has been, so I don't end up going over the same element over and over. All right, we're getting closer. And if you're just tuning in, don't forget that you can check out all of the products that we're using in this demonstration today by visiting our bundle page. And on that bundle page, you will also find this very handy design template that I'm using here today. And you can follow along right with us, or you can save it for when you're ready to make your cards. I know I'm planning on distributing some handmade holiday greetings because I know that it's a nice way to personalize a holiday sentiment. Let people know that it's from you. All right, and we're all set. This is the last one, and then we're going to get started carving. Okay, so let's pull this away. Let's hope I didn't use too much pressure, but I think I had it pretty good. Perfect. All right, so that's exactly what you want. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend trying to reuse your graphite paper. It's kind of a single-use deal. So that's why I like to cut my paper to size to make sure that I don't have a lot of waste. So you have that advantage because you will be using the roll. So very handy stuff for projects like this. Okay, next step, I'm going to show you a little trick on how to carve this design while spinning it around to get some of these really interesting curves, and it's kind of a fun process, and I'm going to show you how I got there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this away from the block, and I'm just going to use scissors. Now if you have craft scissors or something hanging out that you can use, that's what I would recommend. Doesn't have to be anything special necessarily. Okay, and then the rest of this Readycut I'm going to save for my next design. So again, you really only need a certain amount to make your design happen. The rest of it can go toward your next project. So now I have this here. I'm going to work around the edge first, and then we're going to cut this away from the block, and then we'll start carving some detail. So to make that happen, I'm going to be using a Blick lino cutter tool, and the set comes with 6 different nibs that you can choose from, and they're going to have a range of wide gouges to detail gouges. So here are some that you can see here. And basically what you want to do is you want to match the right gouge with the size of the line that you want to produce. So I have a nib here, and it may be difficult to see because it is so small, but it has a nice tight nib that I'll be able to get a smaller line out of rather than a large gouge where I'll get a larger line. So I do want to store these nibs safely, so they go right into the handle. Make sure that that's secure, because you're going to need a good grip when you get started carving. Get that on there. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to want to put that nib into the holder so that we can use it. So you're going to want to loosen this up, and it just twists open, and you'll set it right inside there, and then you want to tighten it. Make sure I'm lined up here. Okay, so if you can see, this is a cutting mat, which is self-healing, so I'm okay to test my nib on here. So if I can apply pressure without this nib moving around, that means that it's ready to use. So it's nice and secure, everything's nice and tight, and I'm not going to lose any of my nibs. Okay, so to get started, I like to have a safety perimeter. So I kind of make a border for myself, and I just carve around because it kind of gives me a stopping point, and it gives me a little more advantage when I go to trim down. And as I'm carving, you can see that I'm carving deep enough to expose the white on the bottom. And that's how I know that I'm doing this right. Okay, and you can see I'm already starting to kind of turn this design around in my hand, which is something that we're going to explore. To make this a little easier, I'm going to go ahead and trim. Okay, and the reason that we're cutting away at the Readycut as opposed to leaving it on the block is because we really don't want anything to print in the background. Really what we want to focus on is the primary design and having that print nice and clean. Okay, so as I'm carving this, I'm going to kind of just turn it in my hand. So it's very convenient that it's a radial design and you spin it kind of on a radius, and that's going to be very handy when you're going around and around. Okay, so when I'm carving detail in particular, first having the detail nib is very important, but then also having good aim. So I like to start in corners or wedges because it makes it easier to nail that tight spot. So if I'm carving, I'm starting from here, and I'm turning my nib and carving along the curve. And I can do that all the way down the line, right? And get these carved out. And I'm turning with my left hand and carving with my right. Of course, if you're a lefty, it'll be the opposite. So I don't want to leave out those lefties out there. Okay, so I'm going to keep my place here. Instead of trying to tackle everything from the same angle, I'm going to just take it one angle at a time. Now, you're thinking, this has to be perfect. I have to try really hard. I'm going to have to hold that linoleum cutter really tightly. Not necessarily. The more comfortable you are moving along a curve, the easier this is going to be. And I have also found that even when your carving isn't perfect, one, it's handmade, so that's part of the process. But the other thing is, this process is so reliable with the Readycut that even a general amount of aiming and nailing that angle is going to get you a really nice print. So don't sweat the small stuff. I think you'll be pleased with yourself once you've had a chance to try this process. Okay, see how easy that was? Okay, now we can go along the other side. And I want to make sure that my hand that I'm not carving with is pretty well out of the way. I don't want to accidentally take a slice at my fingers, so I'm making sure that it's not in the way. All right, so now we're going the other way. And this is a really good process for making cards because the Readycut rubber is reusable. I've had some Readycut blocks that I've had for years, and as long as you take care of them, they can last a good long time. You can get hundreds of prints without having to recarve. So once you make this investment in the process, then you can continue to get the benefits over and over. Now, some of these tighter areas might require a little more focus, but is still very doable. So you're going to follow that same process. I'm going to show you just right on the inside here. Okay. And this is how I'm going to move through this design, because it's adding a step of repetition into an already repetitive design. So as a meditation, it works really nicely, but also keeps me organized and keeps me from missing anything and having to go back to that area and redo it. So still dialing with my left and carving with my right. And I'm kind of just shaking out the carved away pieces of Readycut. Keep my gouge clean. Okay. Now, I'm going to kind of speed through this next part of the process so that we can go ahead and get started printing without spending too much time on carving, but I still want to show you how easy it can be to get some of these interesting shapes. So on the inside, you can see these curly cues, I'd like to call them. And we're going to do the same process where we dial with our left and carve with our right to make these more intricate areas happen. So I'm dialing with my right and left simultaneously, and we've got a curly cue. Okay, so go in and dial. Okay, and you will master this radial design by taking that process in hand. Now, this is a really nice size line. I think I would use this same gouge, and you can kind of pull it away. I think I would use the same gouge all the way through, but certainly there are detail nibs where if there was a little piece that you missed, you can go back and touch those areas up. I would recommend experimenting with the gouges on a scrap piece of Readycut so that you can really get the hang of how it feels, how it should feel, the right kind of pressure, all of that. So if you go to our bundle page, you'll see the 12 by 12 Readycut block. You could carve several different designs from just the one. Okay? All right. So once you do get those details carved out, there's one last step that I want to show you. And for this step, you can use the slicing gouge that's provided in the nib set. But if you are doing block printing, I think it's very handy to just have an X-Acto knife on hand, or any brand of blade. Just be very safe. We're just going to cut this design away so that we go from this with the clunky block that would print the gray area to this nice detail freestanding. So I'm going to go ahead and cut carefully just in this white area that's already carved away. And I can slice off pieces. That can make it a lot easier instead of trying to get in all the details. Okay. And this is going to get you that nice clean print. And if you've just joined us, I just want to remind everyone that we are giving away a free $100 Blick e-gift card. So to be eligible to win that gift card and to go check out our bundle page, of course you can check out our bundle page at any time, but if you get that gift card, all you have to do is head over there and you'll have this project in your hands in no time. So make sure that you like this post and you follow us and you like our page, and respond to our prompt in the chat and let us know your thoughts, and you'll be eligible to win that gift card. And that would be a lot of fun. All right, almost there. Now, I have a little nub here that got left. Let's make sure we carve any of those away, because that will show up on your print. And you don't want to waste any cards. You want it to go well. So we'll get it as clean as we can. And you can kind of pull off the rubber if it's mostly already cut. I've kind of been doing that. Be careful, you don't want to tear it, but it's pretty durable. You'll see once you get started. Okay? Now, you've got this carved away. You can add in as much detail as you like, but now we're going to move into the next step where we're finally going to get started printing, and all this hard work is going to pay off. All right, so I'm just going to set some things aside and we'll get started. Always make sure that your cap is back on your blade and that your gouge is safely placed in the handle so that you don't lose it. That's what's so great about these tools. Okay, now to get started with the printing process, you are going to want to have a couple of things on hand that will be extremely useful. You're going to need your hand printing Baron. You're going to need your Speedball block printing ink. I'm also going to be using a bench hook for the inking process today. We have a 3-inch Speedball soft rubber brayer. And so, all right, so then you're also going to need your Strathmore 5x7 acid-free printmaking cards. So what you're going to get in your box with envelopes. So what you're going to get in your box are these beautiful printmaking surfaces, and it has a score line so that you can fold along that score line, and just like the cards that we have on display here. And we're going to print right on the face of this card. And then you also have a perfectly handy and lovely envelope. And of course you can print on the envelope. We're not going to be doing that today. We're going to focus mainly on the cards, but you could address the card to your friends. Maybe you could put a little print on the back. It's totally up to you. All right. So one other thing that I like to have on hand is just a little container of water. And this way, if I want to change colors, because I can use this block not just to make my red cards, but also my gold, blue, green, and silver cards, so that between colors you can soak your brayer, and because it's water soluble, that ink is going to come right off. You'll dry it off on a paper towel, and you can start again with your next color. So something that's always good to have handy. All right, now we're going to make a couple of these because that truly is the nature of printmaking. You don't just make one, you make several. So I'm going to go ahead and just prep a couple of these cards so that if our first one isn't perfect, then we can go straight into the next one. Now, don't be discouraged if one of your cards turns out differently than some of your others. Some of that can be charming, but also the next one will be better because you'll get the right pressure, you'll get the right amount of ink, you'll get the hang of it, and as you keep printing, they'll come out cleaner and cleaner. So we'll see how we do today once we get started. And I've got my cards ready, kind of around my workspace here. I like to stay nice and organized. I maybe haven't always been that way, but the more organized my space is, the easier it is to go from task to task, especially with something like this. So nice and clean here. All right. When I'm using the tubes of ink, just a word to the wise, you might want to knead that tube a little bit. So I'm kind of pushing the ink around inside. Sometimes separation can occur. Now when you're using the jars, which I tend to prefer to use because I can get a lot of prints and it lasts a good long time, I'll just take a plastic palette knife or a butter knife or whatever you have and just mix that ink together and make sure that there's no separation. So here I'm just making sure that when I go to put this down on my inking plate, my bench hook, that I get just the ink and not the vehicle and the ink next. So what I do when I am printmaking is I like to make a line of ink at the top of my inking plate. Not too much. Now a little goes a long way with ink because it is an ink and it's not a paint. So it's meant to be applied in thin layers and a little goes a long way. So this is the acrylic ink. It does have a pretty quick drying time. There are options for ink extenders, things of that nature, that can help to extend the drying time, much like an oil-based ink would be. And the difference, the reason that you might want to use an oil-based ink would be if you were carving an incredible amount of detail and you needed the ink to be applied in an extremely thin layer. Maybe you're using a true lino block and you need a lot more pressure than what we're going to need to do this process, then you might consider using an oil-based ink. But for this project, the acrylic ink is a perfect pair with the Readycut rubber. So I've kind of drawn down my ink onto the plate and I'm working my brayer both ways. And that's going to help the ink to be applied nice and evenly. Because if I have too much on one side and not enough on another, when I go to roll this onto my block, I'm going to have a lot of uneven ink application, but you want it to be as even as possible. So I'm going both ways, but also I want to hear a little bit of a Velcro sound. Now, you might not be able to hear it, maybe if I'm quiet. But even if not, when you are printing, you'll be able to hear that stickiness, okay? And that's how you know your brayer is primed and ready. It's a little tip I learned from my printmaking instructor. If you're out there today, Ian Thank you very much. It's coming full circle. Let's go ahead and apply this ink onto our Readycut block. And I can kind of dive in. And I'm doing the same thing here. I'm applying the ink in 2 different directions. Again, just in keeping with that idea that you can get an even application. I don't want my ink to start, I don't want to apply it so heavy that I see the ink coming up off of the block, right? So just enough, and we're going edge to edge. Okay. Now, this is the exciting part. We're going to just hand register. So I'm not really using any bumpers here. I'm going to get this a little out of the way. And we're just going to set this on top here because that's where we want to print. And actually, this is where I think we'll do, that's right? Make sure you're going the right way. Boop. Let's do it that way. All right. Just going to set this right on top, and I'm looking to make sure that I go edge to edge because it will go edge to edge. And this is our first one. Let's see how it goes. Now don't push down too hard, but just set it in place. Using an even amount of pressure, not a ton of pressure, but an even pressure. Let's rub the baren over the block. And we want to make sure we're covering everywhere where that block is underneath. I'm not pressing super hard. And sometimes it can move from under you, so again, just gentle but even, and let's see how this goes. Okay. And you're just going to carefully peel it away. That's pretty good. All right, let's do another one. So what you'll see here, we have really good coverage except for maybe a couple places, and maybe that's where I wasn't even enough with my pressure. So I think we should do a couple more. And let's see, usually that first layer can be a priming layer. So let's keep going. Let's make a couple more. And then you guys who are trying this at home, it'll be up to you to take it from here. All right, so I'm going to go back into my ink and roll in both directions. And I can apply right over this. Of course, I can clean my block after every print. I have found this process to be pretty forgiving. So I don't worry too much. I think I can get, you know, a couple of re-inks out of one color at a time. I think we had our alignment pretty well set up. Let's do that again. I'm gonna nudge that out of the way. Okay. All right, and then I register again, just kind of trying to get it in the middle as much as possible. Okay. All right. All right, and I like to be able to feel that edge underneath my baren so that I know I'm going all the way. All right, and then carefully peel away. Perfect, it's a winner. All right, everyone. Well, this is what we're looking for, that perfect handmade holiday greeting. This is an excellent project if you have done this before or if you're a complete beginner. Don't forget to check out our bundle page where you can find all the products that we're using here, and we will comment in the chat the winner of our $100 Blick e-gift card. So congratulations to our winner, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Facebook Live. Thanks for joining us.